the Broadcasting Commission.
This Honorable Senate now resumes its sittings. Before I start, I just want to apologize for my late arrival, but I was distracted by Senators Gale and Fitzhenley, who had some matters of national import in their estimation to discuss. We are visited by actually they have the number at 50 members of the St. George's College who are here with us this morning. And they are accompanied by 2 teachers, so I want to say welcome. Unfortunately, there are those here who will tell you that you are on the wrong side of North Street, but that's for another time and place. Yes, they did. They got a few points today. I want to welcome you to the Senate. I recognize, just to bring to the attention of your teachers, that we're not far from the school, and yet still I think in my time here, for a while anyway, it's the first time we have seen so many students from St. George's. I believe you are still on break or you're just going back to school. I want to just welcome you to the Parliament. And to remind you that this is your Parliament, you're always welcome here. To your teachers and yourself, you're always welcome here. And even if it's a group of you and you have the time and you want to come and you're not supervised by the school, you can come and speak to the clerk and make an arrangement to come and sit and observe the meeting of the Senate or the lower house in this very historic building, because I'm sure you have seen pictures of it before and you have seen it on television, so welcome. Before I proceed further, just like to bring the obvious to your attention, that sitting in the clerk's seat today is Ms. Colleen Lowe, and I'll get to her. But before I get to her, I would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to Ms. Valerie Curtis, who has given exceptional service to the Houses of Parliament for the past 28 years. Ms. Curtis began her service to the Parliament as an assistant clerk in 1995 and demonstrated dedication to duty, and which led her to being appointed deputy clerk. So she started as an assistant clerk, deputy clerk in 2006. And I think at that time the clerk was Ms. Heather Cook, if my memory serves me correctly. Her strong work ethic, sound organization skills, and keen attention to detail saw her being elevated to the position of Clerk of the Houses in 2021. And since that time, she had led the staff at Gordon House through the procedural and administrative support to members of both houses. During her time at the Parliament, Ms. Curtis was committed to upholding parliamentary ideals, and she displayed a people-centric approach to parliamentary administration. Throughout her tenure, she represented Jamaica at parliamentary conferences across the globe and was integral in staging the international parliamentary conferences here in Jamaica, and also hosting a myriad of visiting international delegations to the Parliament. Ms. Curtis was recognized by the Government of Jamaica to her services and contribution to Parliament by conferring on her the Badge of Honor for Meritorious Service, BHM, and the Order of Distinction in the rank of Commander Class in 2014 and 2020, respectively. Ms. Curtis has left an indelible mark on the Parliament And it is my hope, which I'm sure you share, that she will enjoy her well-deserved retirement. From a personal point of view, I've had, over the years, enjoyed an exceptional relationship with Ms. Curtis, and in fact, I traveled with her on a number of occasions, including, I think, on the last occasion to presiding officers meeting in Ottawa, Canada. Now, in the absence and retirement of Ms. Curtis, and the Parliament, the Governor General informed that he had appointed the Deputy Clerk, Ms. Colleen Lowe, as the new Clerk of the Houses. And Ms. Lowe's appointment took effect on Monday, the 8th of April, 2024. Ms. Lowe brings to the position a wealth of experience, and it is hoped that she will continue to apply to the administration of Parliament the experience that she has gained in her many and varied positions. In speaking to her, she likes to emphasize the fact, notwithstanding that she is a trained attorney at law, she likes to emphasize the fact that she's a graduate of the Glenmore High School in Clarendon. During her professional career in Jamaica, Ms. Lowe has worked in a private capacity as an attorney at the National Land Agency and at the Electoral Commission of Jamaica as legal officer before she took the role of Deputy Clerk of the Houses of Parliament in 2022. And from a personal note again, I think that Mr. Bunting will recall that she was there when she was at the Electoral Commission when you were there, Mr. Bunting. Yeah, we were, no? Yeah, but she had, Senator Bunting was integral in the drafting of the financial regulations for the Electoral Commission. Campaign financing was an integral part of that, mainly because of his background. And I think it is fair to say that after you left the commission, Ms. Lowe had worked very closely with retired Mr. Justice Carl Harrison to continue the work that you had done and to see the regulations, financial regulations, come into effect. So, as we say goodbye to Ms. Curtis, we welcome Ms. Colleen Lowe.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I think it would be hard to supplement what has been a detailed and I think entirely appropriate warm recognition of the service given by former clerk, Ms. Valerie Curtis. But allow me to extend on behalf of this side our deepest gratitude and warmest wishes to Ms. Curtis, who served our Parliament, as you have pointed out, for close to 3 decades. And having served as Assistant Clerk, Deputy Clerk, and in fact Acting Clerk when Mrs. Cook was on vacation or was ill, as we had some difficulties in that final year, Ms. Curtis, of course, was here doing yeoman service to ensure the functioning of this honorable chamber. So we thank her for her service, and we thank her for her sweet treats, which she always shared with us from time to time. I think she knew what our tastes were. I had my ginger coconut and the ginger, for which I have a predilection. And she would always find time to share 1 or 2. So that sort of personal touch which she brought to her service was always deeply appreciated. So we wish her continued good health. We wish her continued service in her church, continued good cheer and the love and enjoyment of family and friends as she enters this new phase, and very much look forward to the recognition that she will be paid in that other place, as the Prime Minister has indicated, in the ordinary course of things, that when she comes back and the full Parliament has been brought back from recess, that she will be recognized in that other place more formally. So we thank you for raising our recognition this morning, Mr. President, in respect of former Clerk, Ms. Valerie Curtis, and of course, welcome on behalf of the government side once more, Ms. Colleen Lowe, formally in her role as Clerk. We welcome you, Madam Clerk, this morning and congratulate you on your elevation to this role. You have served well as deputy and have acted as well and demonstrated your efficiency, your efficacy, your attention to detail, and your ability to organize things in a particularly helpful manner that I very much appreciate and look forward to continuing to enjoy from this seat. I know members recognize that she has the knowledge and understanding required for the role and has also extensive training in law and mediation and management, which will undoubtedly redound to the benefit of this Parliament. So again, heartiest congratulations. We wish you the wisdom, fortitude, and grace which this important role requires. And again, look forward to the maintenance of the highest levels of parliamentary procedure as you and your new team, all female, which I recognize. We have welcomed Mr. Luton elsewhere. I'm very pleased to say. He is now serving in the protocol department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Who knew that he had protocol training? You know, we need a wide range of skills, and he happens to hold many of them. He was a rare find and has fit in seamlessly and hit the ground running from day one. So I think it's appropriate to recognize his service here as well, and to say how much I am pleased as Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade to have him on my team elsewhere. Be advised, Mr. President, that he is well accommodated and very much welcome, a welcome part of the team. So those are my few words on this occasion. Again, I look forward to continuing the excellent work of this chamber. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Scott Motley.
President, before I formally start to address the matters, I have to point out to the Minister that in acknowledging Mr. Luton, she forgot a material aspect of his background which suits him so eminently for his position. He attended Clarendon College.
I thought you were going to say.
Of course.
I thought you were going to say he's a member of the JDF Reserve, which he is. Yeah.
And he is a member, yes. I couldn't resist that. You know, once a Clarendon thing comes up. Mr. President, Ms. Curtis has been part of the Parliament for some substantial time, almost as long as I have been on different occasions. She has served dutifully, faithfully, and loyally for over 26 years. Such was the nature of her service that the government acknowledged it not on one occasion, but on 2 occasions, and so she is a recipient of national honors. I speak to her accomplishments, but I think it's also very important for me to speak to her character, because in this Senate, she has provided guidance, she has provided correction, but always with grace and with dignity. And that, I think, is what really is a hallmark of somebody who you should applaud, encourage, and celebrate. Minister, I will miss the sweet treats although I think now I will be in a better position physically because they will not be forthcoming anymore. But I didn't know that we had a favorite sweet. So Miss Curtis would always have her little packages which she would distribute to different people. It was not. Then Senator Gale, she must have looked at you and decided that in her usual caring, nurturing way, you were not to be a recipient.
You're better off for your own good.
I hope that we will have the opportunity to pay a real tribute to her when we are so prepared and when she is present. And Mr. President, I would have hoped that on an occasion today, a significant day for Ms. Lowe, she would have been here in the well of the House celebrating her deputy's ascension. And it would be remiss of me if I did not join the chorus of voices asking that that devastating missive which was sent to her and made public on the eve of her retirement, which sullied her reputation and which continues to harm her, it would be remiss of me if I did not ask that that missive be withdrawn.
You cannot apologize on my behalf, and I hope all of us behalf.
Just a few days before retirement, when she should have been left as a totally celebrated person. That was a cruel act.
Absolutely.
And today, Ms. Lowe, in a way, that's the only thing that distracts from you, because today should really have been about you and your ascension to this very important role. I admire young women like you who demonstrate your capacity, who demonstrate your aptitude, and who are rewarded for that. But I want to share with you something that Rex Nettleford told me. The most important thing that I've ever heard in my life. He said, the same hands that cheer you today are the same hands that cheer you tomorrow.
Wow, profound.
And that, on this occasion, I find it necessary to give you that guidance which has taken me through my entire public career. But, Ms. Lowe, I have great expectations of you. Not because you attended Glenmuir College, not because, although that is one of the qualifying factors. Glenmuir. Senator Longmore has corrected me, and I stand corrected. Glenmuir High School, still in Clarendon, still in Maypen. I embrace it fully. You are in the line of several females who have gone before you. And this is fascinating because I think Shirley Lewis, who was a magistrate, left the bench to come here, started that tradition. And prior to that, it was Edley Deans. And I think that he is the last man who has held that position since then. Am I right, Mr. President?
Absolutely correct. Probably before Edley.
Yes, but I'm talking about since Mr. Deans. So it was Miss Lewis, Miss Cook, Miss Curtis, and now you. I think that is significant. And perhaps what it does, it gives you a heavy burden. But from what I have observed, with your calm and your poise and your dignity, you will dispatch that service well. I wish you all the best. Now, I take note that you have been well trained in mediation. And I think those skills in a fractious, rambunctious parliament will do you some good. because the interventions which a clerk has to make are not only on the floor, but sometimes behind with the members. So on this day,
Even though it comes with pay.
the opposition wishes you all the best on your journey. We'll be here for a part of it on this side. And we again congratulate you, if it pleases you.
Thank you very much, Senator Scott Motley. Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate is the annual report and audited financial statements of the Fair Trading Commission for the year ending 2015-2016.
Bills brought from the Honorable House of Representatives.
To the Honorable Senate, I have the honor to advise the Honorable Senate that on the 9th day of April 2024, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Appropriation Act 2024 to exclude all expenditure classified as statutory expenditure and for connected matters was passed in the House of Representatives. Juliet Holness, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I signify my willingness to take charge of the bill.
A bill shortly entitled the Appropriation Amendment Act 2024 read a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill, and I further beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will ask for suspension of the standing orders to allow me to take the bill through its concluding stages.
Thank you, Minister. Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the Senate, motions for leave to introduce bills, the presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained, public business. Minister, did I understand that Senator Samuda was to make a statement this morning? So you're going to ask for the recommittal of item 2. You are going to do that anyway? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, yes, and I'm sorry. And I want to just, Senator Gabrielle Morris is online, although we're not seeing her, and that's why I forgot. Seek permission from the membership for her to join by that process. Those in favor?
Aye.
Welcome, Senator Morris.
Yes, Mr. President, I now move for suspension of the standing orders to allow me to take second reading of the bill and to take the bill through its concluding stages.
Point when that motion, if that motion has been taken, no, I wish to comment on the motion.
On the motion itself?
That is correct.
Okay. So I put the question and then you'll speak on it. Our members would have heard the question. Those in favor? Senator? No, I think Senator Brown, you want to speak on the motion? Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, this motion is being brought because the standing orders requires that the Senate be given a certain number of days between a bill being brought from the other place to be debated here. We are not on this side taking issue so much with the fact that this bill is being taken hurriedly. The concern we have on this side is that in the memorandum on objects, the bill that comes to us, which we're seeing for the first time today, seeks to exclude from a bill passed 2 weeks ago some elements. And according to the Minister of Finance, in those memo of objects and reason, it is to make sure that this bill before us today conforms with the Constitution of Jamaica.
All right, Senator Brown, hear what I'm going to say right now.
Yeah.
The motion before the Senate, you know.
Is to extend
no,
the standing orders.
No, it's to suspend the standing orders in order to allow the minister to take the bill today. No,
Yeah,
so.
that's what I'm addressing here.
No, but what you're addressing is the bill itself.
No.
But hold on a little bit. You get up and say that you're not taking issue with the motion. That's what you say?
No.
You never said that?
No. I'm not taking issue with this time frame, even though we got it only this morning.
So what you taking issue with?
I'm taking issue with the fact that this bill, which is intended to conform with the Constitution, ought not to be rushed this morning for a number of reasons. And it is those reasons.
So what you're saying then, you're taking issue. No, I'm just trying to understand. Don't lose your temper with me. You know?
I'm not, my friend, I'm not losing temper. I just want to know why you interrupting me so much.
I'm trying to just understand.
Put on.
Because here the motion that the standing orders be suspended to allow the minister to take it today.
And I am objecting to that. Let me object to that.
Okay, so deal with that part of it then.
I'm objecting to that for a number of reasons. And I'm not getting upset with you. Among the reasons is that this bill comes to us this morning. I think all of us in the Senate, well, most of us some of us in the Senate is seeing it for the first time. In seeing this bill and seeing the memorandum and objects, it's clear it is to exclude from the bill passed 2 weeks ago matters that did not conform with the Constitution of Jamaica. And as a review chamber, it is our duty to make sure that bills that come to us, rushed, moneyed bill, or otherwise, are in conformity with the lawmaking process.
And my responsibility here now is to ensure that what is being done conforms not only with the Constitution, which is the overarching law, right, members of the...
President, why are you interrupting me? Why am I not being allowed to speak? Why am I not being allowed to speak? What is
the standing orders I'm dealing with? Hear what the standing orders say. An interval of not less than 4 days shall elapse between the first and second reading, unless the Senate on a motion made and question put agree to proceed with the bill at an earlier date or forthwith. So
that's what I'm
saying,
speaking
so
to.
Speak to it. So, but you know, man, you're digressing and going on to the bill.
No, I'm not digressing. I'm explaining why my attitude to that motion is not supported. And in so doing, I start with what has been presented to us. Because this is what you want the standing order to be suspended to allow for. It is to allow for conformity with the Constitution, which would indicate to me that the bill taken 2 weeks ago was unconstitutional.
Senator Brown, deal with that at a different stage. Because you're talking about the bill now. You're saying the bill is unconstitutional. Why are you interrupting Senator Brown?
No, you are interrupting.
Mr. President, I'm appealing to you as supposedly an impartial presiding officer. We had, the last time we were here, the acting president was constantly trying to dictate to opposition members how they should construct their contribution. The standing orders give each member half an hour to speak on a motion, 30 minutes to speak on a motion. I think it's only fair to allow the member to lay the foundation in the way he wishes to.
But hear what you just said. Hear what you just said. First of all, I have never chosen to dictate or sought to dictate anything to Senator Brown, you know, because I'm wiser than that. What you just said a while ago, they are given a half an hour to speak to the motion. Yes. Senator Brown is talking about the bill. So let me put the motion, you vote against it, and then we proceed.
No. Senator Brown was merely laying the foundation for the principal point that he wishes.
So let him continue and let me hear what the principal point is, because I'm still waiting for it.
No. Thank you, dear President. The motion before us is to suspend the standing order to allow us to take this bill. Yes, and I'm rooting my opposition in the nature of the bill. A bill which seeks to amend what was clearly an unconstitutional bill passed 2 weeks ago, and for which the Minister of Finance just a short while ago on my way here on radio said no money has been spent. He was in an interview with Emily Crooks. Emily Crooks Shields. You and I work together, so you want to call her Shields. Emily is my friend. Emily. Mr. President, as a senator, we have to be au fait with the way bills are transformed into acts of parliament. It's my understanding that a bill must pass through both houses of the parliament, except in certain money bill situation. But that exception is not one before us now. The Appropriation Bill, which this seeks to amend, passed through both houses. There is a requirement in the parliamentary system that a bill, once passed by both houses, must be certified by the Attorney General, that such a bill conforms with the Constitution of Jamaica. And my concern is whether the Appropriation Bill, the principal bill, which this principal act, which this seeks to amend, so conformed, was so certified by the Attorney General. And as the Minister of Finance said this morning, it was picked up days after, an error was picked up days after the bill was passed. So I need to know, did this bill that we're wanting to amend today, to suspend the standing orders to amend, was it assented to by the GG? And whether that assent was given by the GG on the basis of an advice from the Attorney General that it met the constitutional requirement? If so, there's no need for us to be back here today unless the Cabinet was advised by the same Attorney General that it is out of conformity with the Constitution, which raises serious issues that require some explanation before I can vote on this motion before us. Among those...
Okay.
No, I'm not finished. Among those is whether or not the same Attorney General who certified that the bill conformed with the Constitution is the same Attorney General who now tells the Cabinet that it's not in conformity. This raises fundamental constitutional issue. And it raises the issue, thank you, Senator Bunting, of competence, as the Prime Minister refused to accept a resignation because such a major blunder happening for the first time in our 62 years of independence. Never happened under Buster, never happened under Sangster, never happened under Shearer, never happened under Manley, never happened even under Mr. Siaga, never happened under P.J. Patterson, never happened under Portia, never happened under Bruce Golding. For the first time, unprecedented in our history, such an event is happening. That requires an explanation before I hurriedly vote on this motion So I'm not finished. So the issue before me, for me to decide, is whether or not this constitutional breach was certified by the Attorney General. If it was certified by the GG act on it and assented. Because we live, Mr. President, in a litigious society. Up to this morning, one editorial in the leading newspaper in the country was urging us, somebody to take presiding officer of Parliament to the court. A litigious society. Any citizen could go to the court and challenge the Appropriation Bill that we are being asked to amend. So, to support that motion, I need to know, Minister, did the Attorney General certify the bill passed 2 weeks ago as conforming with the Constitution? Secondly, did the Attorney General then advise the Cabinet that it was unconstitutional? And as a former trade unionist would say, Ms. Edith Arnold, who going to suffer the consequence? Is there a resignation on the card for this monumental blunder that the Gleaner called budget backtrack? So, can we get answers to those? Was this bill, because it was not sent to you, President, then what should be coming to us today is not an amendment, but as my friend Senator Graham would say, a de nuevo bill. A de nuevo bill. A new bill passed by the House, approved by us. So, I would like answers to those to determine how I vote on this motion, because this is a fundamental constitutional issue. It's not about a transcription error. It's about sanctioning a law that we know to be unconstitutional. I remember in this Parliament standing up and opposing the NIDS bill. The court said it was unconstitutional. I've been asked to vote on state of emergency. The court have ruled aspects of the state of emergency unconstitutional. There is no, and that too before my time, and before you was even born. And President, suppression crime mark. And President, the courts have been zealously doing its duty of monitoring our work of Parliament. And I am told that next week, Friday, another issue as to whether a bill passed by us was constitutional is due for judgment in the Supreme Court. So in a litigious society, I need the safeguard that the Attorney General did signal that this bill, the Appropriation Bill passed by both houses, was constitutional. If yes, why are we meeting today? If no, when was the Cabinet and the government informed that was in breach of the Constitution? And is this the right resolution? Should we be looking at a new bill, or should we be amending a bill which, under challenge, may prove to be unconstitutional? The people of the country needs to know. I need to know to decide how I vote on extending and suspending the standing order to allow for this. This Senate that you preside over must zealously ensure that we fulfill our duties to the Constitution, because every one of us who took an oath to uphold the Constitution of Jamaica. And I do not wish to be rushed into taking decisions, as we were with NIDS, as we were with the SOE, that turns out to be unconstitutional. I close by saying this, President. I have seen too many matters going to the Constitutional Court, including letters of resignation that have been battered down. May it please you, Mr. President, and may it please me and the citizens of Jamaica in knowing, did the Attorney General certify as constitutional something that obviously by the conduct of the Minister of Finance was not constitutional? Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.
And I yield back the rest of my 30 minutes.
Senator Morris.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senator Lambert Brown has raised a very fundamental issue. And I rise, Mr. President, because I recalled from the last debate, I made the point and expressed concerns about the bill being taken the day after it was passed in the House of Representatives. But because of the importance of the Appropriations Bill, we went ahead with the legislation. And the fact is, Mr. President, we are here because of what is now seen and regarded as a major embarrassment for the government. And I don't think any member of the government side is pleased with the situation because of what, well, probably. But, you know, it is not a situation that one can be excited about. And, Mr. President, the standing orders require that we examine legislation over a period of time. There's a process that is outlined. And when I reflect on what has transpired, if the bill was tabled in the Senate the Friday, or if it was tabled after the meeting of the House of Representatives and allowed to be there for a while, then the error would have been spotted. And the bill would have been, the bill would have been withdrawn, and a correct bill be piloted through the House of Representatives and then through the Senate. And so, upon Senator Brown raising these constitutional issues, it brings some concern to me as one who pledged to uphold and defend the Constitution. And I tell you, it's the first I'm hearing the arguments being presented by Senator Lambert Brown, and I am very concerned about it because the Appropriations Bill is a major legislation in the grand scheme of things where Jamaica is concerned. It is that legislation that determines how funds are expended throughout the government process. And if there are legitimate concerns about the constitutionality of what has taken place, I am urging the government, notwithstanding the exigencies, notwithstanding the urgencies, to look at the arguments that have been presented by Senator Brown carefully. Even if it means that we're going to take a break, do some consultations to make sure everything is in order, fine with me. But make sure that when we leave here today as senators, we would have done our job, because I don't want anybody to carry this parliament to court. And when they carry them to court, all of us inside here would be featured. All right? So I am urging, Mr. President, that we take the concerns that Senator Brown has placed on the table seriously.
Thank you very much, Senator Morris.
Mr. President, I thank the members for their comments and understand the context within which they have put their arguments forward. I am confident in stating that the reason we are here today is to ensure that a transcription error which occurred at the technical level within the Ministry of Finance, but which was, as soon as discovered, brought to the attention of the relevant directorate, which then initiated the process to ensure that we had the amendment bill, which was passed in the other place on Tuesday and then brought to us today, was addressed to ensure that there is no unconstitutionality and that there is no disruption of government operations. The timeliness of our action is therefore important. The timeliness of the actions taken within the ministry and the timeliness that brings us here today is what is important to ensuring that there is no wrong-footedness by this chamber. Mr. President, the standing orders, and in particular 49.2, allowed for the motion of which I gave notice this morning. It indicates that where there is a difference in the amount of time provided in terms of notice for a bill, that a motion will correct that, that period, indeed. And accordingly, this is the motion which is on the table. The bill was, in fact, circulated after it was passed in the lower house. It was circulated on Tuesday evening to best facilitate members' awareness in the current circumstances. We recognize that they are not normal circumstances. There is, in fact, an error to be corrected within the bill. But we recognize that there is no error in the budget. There is no error within the monies allocated to any ministry. There is, however, a transcription error that can be corrected by the bill before us today. I am unaware of any constitutional issue that affects the operation of the bill because the nature of the error in respect of the inclusion of some statutory heads of expenditure, which shouldn't have been included because they're already voted for. So they're already provided for. There is nothing that was put in that is requiring a further calculation. It is just correcting a transcription error. And in that context, Mr. President, so that we don't go down paths on which we do not need to tread, I am asking that the motion be put to the vote so that the bill which is before us can be debated.
Members would have heard the question. Those in favor? Aye. Against?
That's fine.
No,
Just
Senator Johnson Smith. The record will indicate that the record will indicate that Senator Brown
I'm
has
actually
abstained.
calling for divide on it.
Or you want a divide?
Yeah.
Senator Brown, I'm noting that your abstention, but the vote had already been taken in relation to the divide.
Ask those who oppose. You ask, right?
Look here, it's not an issue. It's not an issue, you know.
But let my abstention...
No. Your abstention will be noted. It's not an issue. And you're calling for a divide? Senator Johnson Smith, you want a divide?
Abstention has been noted. I'm fine unless my colleagues wishes to also put on record their position. But I will not be bullied into breaching the Constitution.
Senator Brown, look here. There is nobody in this chamber who would even attempt to bully you. No. So, Minister, Madam Clerk, you will note the abstention. Minister, continue, please.
Young men from North Street, please do not pick up bad habits from this chamber when you return. I'm quite sure that your teachers will so guide you.
Here is a good example. Follow this example. Don't look over the other side.
Mr. President, thank you very much for...
Thank you, Minister. Go ahead, please.
...taking us to this point, and I now rise to present the Appropriations Amendments Act 2024. And just for clarity, we'll go through maybe one or two points that I just mentioned, but because I am going to take the bill notwithstanding having addressed one or two issues in the preliminary discussion which took place. The purpose of this bill, essentially, is to extract, to exclude, to remove from the Act, from the Appropriations Act, the amounts related to statutory expenditures that were inadvertently included in the schedule. Mr. President, more particularly, while all expenditure is included in the estimates of expenditure, which we ordinarily refer to as a budget, and that has been done, this particular type of expenditure, which really the salaries and allowances that apply to commissions of parliament, and they've been identified in the bill, that because they are voted for already, they don't need to be included in the Appropriations Act. As a result of a transcription error, where essentially, well, they're not voted on by the House of Representatives. Well, the legislation which provides for them has been voted on, and that is the way in which it is taken. That is the way in which it is understood within the legal framework. That is my advice. The point being that because they have already been provided for, that they don't have to be voted on through the Appropriations Act every year. That is the point. It is correct. So I'm glad you agree with it. In the estimates of expenditure, and let me just explain why this is about a transcription error, just in case there's anyone who perhaps would want a bit more detail. On pages 5 to 8 of the estimates of expenditure, so a big yellow book, you'll find a summary of the budget, of the provisions to be tabled. And there are 5 columns which run across the page beside the heads and numbers and titles of estimate that include statutory expenditure, gross expenditure to be voted, appropriations in aid, net expenditure to be voted, and net provisions in estimates including statutory expenditures. And these are the 5 columns that you will see. And what occurred was that column 5 was picked up and put into the Appropriations Act in respect of the relevant heads instead of column 4. So what we're doing today is amending those relevant heads under Schedule 2, under column 2 in the schedule to ensure that the correct balances are included, which do not include statutory expenditures. That's all that is. One column was picked up and put across instead of another. And because it is that, well, as I've explained already, they don't need to be voted on. The balance that is provided for in the schedule and in the Act itself, that those need to be corrected for effectiveness, for appropriateness, and for good order in the preparation of warrants going forward. So the amendment of the Act today, let me just be 100% clear once more, it does not affect the budget. It does not affect the aggregate 24-25 central government expenditure estimates of 1.341 trillion Jamaican dollars. It does not affect that. The budget that has been presented by the government of Jamaica for the fiscal year is the budget that will be implemented. There is no change to the budget. I'm going to say this probably 5 or 6 different ways before I sit down, because it is clear to me from some of the public discourse that there are some people who legitimately don't understand, and then there are some people who are trying to sow confusion. So capital expenditure remains the same at $80 billion. That is as it's set out in the estimates of expenditure. Recurrent expenditure, public debt service, all remain at the same levels that are in the estimates of expenditure. The revenue estimates, they all remain the same as presented, and all the benefits that have been announced in the presentations by the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica, and the Honorable Nigel Clerk, Minister of Finance, all of those benefits will be delivered. They have not changed. A transcription error occurred in the Appropriations Act. Nothing more and nothing less. So this, therefore, Mr. President, is still a budget for the people. It's still a budget allowing our pensioners to receive more money every month, for our young heart trainees who will get their tool grants when they achieve their level 4 training, for our young people going to university but need tuition support, for the communities that are waiting more road repairs, new water systems, new garbage trucks, and new buses. Those will all be delivered under the same budget. What we are doing today will not change the fact that hospitals will be renovated, as has been promised, that the investments in our security architecture will continue, and what occurred was simply a transcription error in the Appropriations Bill. So I want to be clear that Section 2 is to be amended to reflect the aggregate voted sum. So this is a sum that was voted on in the Appropriations Act. And it's going to amend the sum of $817,265,242,000 is what will be provided for, instead of the figure of $849,896,471,000. That is a change that is going to be made in Section 2. In column 2, and if you have a look at the bill, in the column 2 in relation to the affected heads of expenditure, they will be amended by including the figures under the sums granted as against the numbers and heads of expenditure that are set out on page 2 going into 3, as well as the subtotals that carry forward on each page. And this is because it is mathematical. Everything that took place was changed because the wrong column was picked up and pulled across. So in closing, just allow me to reiterate, Mr. President, that the amendments here today comprise a transcription error which absolutely does not affect the budget. There is no error in the budget. And as soon as it was discovered by the technical team, it was brought to the attention of the political directorate, and the relevant steps immediately engaged to make these amendments come through to us today. This has been done quickly so that it has not affected the operations of government. And I am advised that as at this morning, the warrants required to make payments under the relevant heads have been prepared in anticipation of the amendments before us, so that when they are passed, they may also act expeditiously to ensure, again, that there are no disruptions in the payments to be made. So, Mr. President, in this context, and recognizing that ultimately, whatever your political affiliation may be, we are here about the business of government, the business of Jamaica, rather, and it is important that the amendments be passed today to ensure that all that needs to be done pursuant to the warrants which will be issued in respect of these heads is done in a timely manner. In that context, Mr. President, I welcome the presentations on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Scott Motley.
Mr. President, I rise to make a few remarks which I consider are pertinent. And I do understand why we are here and the necessity of all being here. But I don't think at the same time that we can just make it a trivial matter. The reason why we are here.
Whose mic is on? Somebody's mic is on.
Maybe your computer is...
Because the fact of that error being made, described by the minister as a transcription error, the fact that this error has been made it is indeed a deep honor.
No, it's a free-for-all.
I mean, that you should be in the chair, acting as president, Senator Braham, is something that strikes me today. If it were to be made permanent, I would certainly not withhold my vote. But as you have the Constitution in your hand, you will be able to see that I think it is section 114. Don't quote me, I might be wrong.
116.
But the whole point of it is that the Constitution lays down, in particular, that these matters ought not to be present in the Appropriations Act. And the truth of it, Mr. President, is that this is the very first time that this has ever happened.
Since 1962?
And in the context of the way in which the Minister of Finance presented his budget, it is disturbing because it reflects very negatively on him. You see, it is a tone which has been adopted by him with the props. Somebody of his intellectual rigor resorts to paper around the parliament, speaking very disparagingly about persons who have held positions in this parliament as Minister of Finance and Leader of Opposition, Papa Tax and Master Mark, and the way in which he presents himself. Red card. This is a red card. But I'm rising to speak because there has been a tendency in this parliament, and indeed in the Senate, to give legislation less than what it deserves. And let me say it, this kind of scrutiny which is required in this, the upper house, is sometimes quite lacking. And it is in this context that I ask, how could a transcription error not be detected, having gone through so many various channels, standing finance, checking by the ministry, all of those? How would this error have remained undetected until after the bill was passed? Because we are all very sensitive to the importance of this bill. This is a people's budget. This is the most significant act that takes place in the parliament. This is what determines whether people eat, whether people drive, whether people have water in their tanks, whether people have water in their pipes, whether teachers can teach, whether the tools and the resources are available for the development of this country. Is the most important piece of legislation that is tabled. And the Constitution directs how it should be done. So, with a government who boasts every day during the budget debate of how it has achieved the best macroeconomic policies that we have ever seen in this country, without giving any credit to those who assisted in that heavy lifting. When you have, during a budget presentation, people being evaluated and not recognized for the contribution that they have made to this country, and when you have props being pulled out and red cards being given out, it reflects very negatively on this administration. And it raises some serious governance issues which we cannot just slide by as a transcription error. We cannot do that.
Not just transcription, that's spinning.
Never before in the history of our parliament has this ever happened. And my position is quite clear, you know. I know that mistakes are made. I know that mistakes are made. But the question I ask, Minister, is how this one was never detected until days after the budget was passed?
Somebody never listened.
Who was not looking?
Somebody never listened.
Who was not looking? So everything just comes and we just overlook it.
Transcription.
You see, I have seen it here with laws passed. I have observed it. And sometimes I observe that in spite of the fact that the omissions or the errors or the likelihood of misinterpretation has been pointed out, it is decided that nonetheless the law will go to the Governor General for assent. I have noticed it. But I never expected that it would happen with the most important piece of legislation. Well, I was delighted to hear that the minister was actually giving an interview this morning, because I had noted that after the budget, he was very available to the media. 1 hour interviews on television, one program one night, the same program the next night, in defense of the budget which he had presented, asking for the encomiums, although not openly. Promise made, promise kept. Promise made, promise kept. Sometimes a little humbling is required by the universe. Mr. President, I take very seriously the points that Senator Brown has made. The opposition will not stand in the way of an amendment that is required, because ultimately we are here doing the people's business.
That's what the opposition is doing.
But I would say that this exercise, this issue which has arisen, should be a lesson to the government that sometimes you make haste slowly. And I'm not talking about the budget now when I speak. I'm talking about other pieces of legislation which have come to this parliament because a box has to be ticked, even though it is flawed. And right now we are having a joint select committee looking at one such that was passed December 2023, which in my view was an indication, an example of making haste to get something on record. So, Mr. President, I don't think I have any need to detain anybody any further. You know, before I rose to speak, I remembered a poem which was written by William Butler Yeats. And I just want to tell you the first 3 lines and leave those with you without further comment. It says, turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold, if it pleases you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And for me, too, it's quite a delight to get up with you sitting in the chair.
Yes. Technology is ahead of me. Senator Golden Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. And I, too, recognize your, albeit temporary, posture in that seat. Mr. President, I know we are in what I will describe as a warm season. And I note the level and loudness of the politics in our debate about national issues, whether in this chamber or the other, or in the public domain. But on a matter such as this, I would have expected my colleagues in this chamber to take a different approach, to take an approach that was practical and relevant to the issue that has been raised in relation to this amendment bill. I think the leader of government business set it out very clearly, very succinctly. A transcription error that made its way into the Appropriations Bill needed to be corrected. This is not a situation where there was jeopardy to the budget. This is not a situation where the government couldn't operate while this error existed. It was discovered quickly, and we have sought to correct it. But while we sit here and ask, as Senator Brown did, who is to be blamed, which I find a peculiar question, because in matters like this, the the leading persons who deal with this are members of the civil service. And sometimes if I listen to my colleagues on the other side, I get the impression that we must never ever hold members of the civil service to account. But I want to make a couple of points. The Minister of Finance opened the budget debate, I believe it was the 12th of March. I was overseas at the time and watching it online. On that day, this appropriation bill was tabled. I stand corrected if I've gotten the date slightly wrong. He gave his opening presentation. I believe the shadow spokesman on finance went next a couple days later. The leader of the opposition went a few days after that. And then I believe the Prime Minister and finally the Minister of Finance closed the debate on the 26th of March. By my estimation, we were looking at what, about 2 weeks? 2 weeks when the bill sat in its errand state on the table of the lower house. As I understand it, the error was picked up after we passed it by the very technical officers in the ministry who, as a matter of course, were reviewing what came back to them. The correction has come and it has come fast. But Mr. President, for all of the scrutiny and for all of the holding government to account, none of my opposition colleagues, neither in the House nor in this chamber, picked it up. I can say this chamber. I can very much say this chamber because like I did, Senator Brown, you'll get your chance. And when you get it, you can be very loud. The bill sat in the lower house for over 2 weeks. It came to the Senate and we voted it. We voted on it then. And since voting on it, it's been another passage of time. So we thank the officers in the Ministry of Finance who picked it up. But let us not politicize this. Because though the error may not have occurred before, it's not a difficult error to make. And I don't want us to politicize unfairly something that in the normal course of putting these documents together could have happened to anyone under any administration. And I do not trivialize the import of having an accurate appropriations bill before the Parliament. But what I reject, Mr. President, is the use of language like unconstitutional, when my colleagues on that side know very well that nobody in this chamber can pronounce any unconstitutionality on any act of Parliament. That, Mr. President, is the purview of the courts of Jamaica, not the Parliament. The Parliament passes law. It is the court who interprets law to determine whether the law comports with the provisions of the Constitution. And whenever that language is used on that side, Mr. President, there is a tendency to use the language without providing any evidence as to why there is any view that it is unconstitutional. You must stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Okay? Stop it. The Jamaican people demand more and they demand better. Stop it. If you get up and make a claim, support it. Don't just get up and use adjectives. I'm always wary of adjective users in this chamber who only use adjectives but provide no evidence. Mr. President, this is a simple matter to correct a transcription error, to get on with the people's business. I urge my colleagues to let us get on with the people's business and stop wasting time in the name of politics.
Senator Lambert Brown. Thank you, Senator Golden Campbell.
Mr. President, may I congratulate you on the high office, the high chair that you occupy. As you know, they say a busher for a couple of minutes is still a busher. Mr. President, I don't know why my friend, Senator Golden Campbell, have chosen to be so critical of the Member of Parliament for Northwest St. Andrew, the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Dr. Nigel Clerk. It is Dr. Nigel Clerk who, in the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons, said the following: this bill seeks to amend the Appropriation Act 2014 to exclude all expenditure classified as statutory expenditure in accordance with sections 116(3) and 4 of the Constitution of Jamaica. So it is Nigel Clerk, Dr. Nigel Clerk, my friend, the Minister of Finance, who raised the issue of constitutionality. And then, shouting from the top of our voice, Senator Golden Campbell wants us on this side to be silent. Well, this senator is not going to be silent. I took an oath to uphold the Constitution of this country, and I intend so to do. Mr. President, Senator Golden Campbell must be the last person to lecture me or us on this side about the Constitution. I remember a debate in this chamber over state of emergency, and I said that the government shouldn't blame the opposition. They could go and renew the state of emergency. A former Attorney General sitting in this chamber, my friend Senator Bryan, said that my suggestion was unconstitutional. And guess who echoed it? Senator Golden Campbell. She, not the courts, declared that I was unconstitutional. Not the courts. And guess what, President? Guess what? The Cabinet of Jamaica, no doubt with the advice of the current Attorney General, renewed the SOE the day after it expired. And that's considered to be constitutional. So you were wrong. Senator Bryan was wrong, and I was correct. Well, you won't say it for me, so I will say it for myself. The reality is, they can't lecture me. Me who sat at John Maxwell's feet at JC and did civics in the 1960s, using Lenny Ruddock's book, Civics for Young Jamaica. I understand the Constitution. I invite you to go read Lenny Ruddock's book, Civics for Young Jamaicans. So don't come and lecture me about Constitution. And don't lecture Nigel Clerk either, because he, with the full authority of the cabinet, wrote the memo of objects and
you can present your point without being so ungracious, you know.
President, I don't come here to be gracious or ungracious, you know. I come here to speak truth to power.
You know that there is nothing more gracious than the truth.
President, I leave my colleague, Senator Scott Motley, to nice it up for now. But as for me, I am going to give you the unvarnished truth. I am not going to shout like Senator Golden. But the reality is, she said we shouldn't speak about the constitutionality. Mr. President, this Senate has been called today because of another unconstitutional bill that was passed by us. Passed by the House and by us. Another unconstitutional bill. I remember the vigor I put up against a NIDS bill. Certified as constitutional.
Senator Brown, you know that you're going to say that I'm troubling you, but remember I wasn't here. The appropriations bill was actually passed in the Senate here, so you all look on it and never see the mistake.
I wasn't here, sorry.
Oh.
I had an accident and I wasn't here.
Well, I know.
And I might not have seen it. But President.
Okay, all right, no problem.
You were here, you know.
No, I wasn't here.
My apology. I withdraw that. The JC boys weren't here. The JC boys weren't here. So the RS would have picked it up. Mr. President, another unconstitutional bill, like the NIDS, like the SOE, another unconstitutional act, like the resignation of senators. And there's another decision of the court to come next week, Friday, as to whether or not the retirement of certain public officers that was amended, the extension of the tenure of certain public officers, whether that meet the Constitution. It may or may not. But the point is, in a litigious society, that's a matter that has gone to the court. We await with bated breath the decision of the court, the Constitutional Court, which we are told will come next Friday. So, President, I am on record, whether I sat on that side or this side, to speak out against validation bills. Because those validation bills indicate that something was not right in how we treat with these matters. Something wrong when we have to come back and validate actions. One of the most recent validation, well, we didn't go by the validation route, but we amended the Road Traffic Act, was when the courts ruled that we were as government, charging motorists more money than was allowed by law. That was challenged in the court. The court ruled that the government was acting illegally. The government scrambled. They decided to come with a validation bill. They called a meeting, special meeting of the House on a Friday. The House on a Friday. So you, Mr. President, had to adjourn your Senate meeting at 10 o'clock, facilitate the House meeting on that Friday, and then resume a meeting of the Senate. And the same Friday, it called Chaka Chaka government to pass not a validation bill because of the confusion in government, but an amendment to the Road Traffic Act. So it's not the first time we're getting these blunders. It's not the first time we're getting these blunders. And so, this blunder, which moves to the level of the constitutional breach, is but another thing that the Ministry of Finance has gotten wrong. And Mr. President, there are a number of things in recent times that the Ministry of Finance has gotten wrong. Mr. President, my intervention is to try and call upon the ministry officials, call upon the minister, call upon public bodies to do right by the citizens of the country, to obey the rules of law. Mr. President, this blunder at finance by itself may appear to be transcription. But have there been other blunders? When a minister of government is sent a report from a regulatory agency, but that report can't be found in the ministry, hidden away, let me take away the hidden, subsequently found after the minister himself searched a number of filing cabinets, something is wrong with the ministry. When an important report, like the SSL report from FSC, Financial Services Commission, to the minister, couldn't be found, and Usain Bolt has lost billions. Mr. President, the census is the responsibility of the Ministry of Finance. That is anachronic, as Ezra Mill would say. That is anachronic. You're not counting the people you're supposed to count. So that's two things. Two other blunders in the Ministry of Finance. Mr. President, the Auditor General, in the long delayed report, delayed because presiding officer of Parliament didn't release it, said that the ministry, essentially that's what it's saying, the Ministry of Finance is presiding over a procurement policy that allow $400 million in taxpayers' money to be used to pay rent for an occupied building. That's a third blunder. In addition to this one, something is wrong in the Ministry of Finance. Mr. President, when the Auditor General says what's happening at the FSC, and the Gleaner report called it free fall, money going left, right, and center at FSC, Ministry of Finance responsible for that ministry. Something is wrong with the Ministry of Finance. Senator Gill, when public sector workers' increments is declared to be taken away, but for the fight of people like you and the Jamaica Confederation of Trade Union, for it to be restored, something is wrong in the Ministry of Finance. Mr. President, when we decide to remove GCT from imported goods, raw food, without consulting our farmers and other stakeholders, something is wrong in the Ministry of Finance. When the Ministry of Finance recommend a reduction in JUTC fares because it would impact inflation, but it didn't to the extent so declare, something is wrong in the Ministry of Finance. Mr. President, when the Minister of Finance promised to have FBI investigate SSL, and we get no report from FBI, something is wrong in the Ministry of Finance. What has happened to that FBI report? And when we're told that additional arrests at SSL are imminent, but doesn't take place, something is wrong. Something is wrong. So it's not just transcription error. Structurally, fundamentally, something is wrong at the ministry. All of these things I just outlined has happened under the minister, Nigel Clerk. All of these things. Something wrong. And as a senator, it's my duty to bring it to this parliament, bring it to the country, that all is not well. Too many errors, too many blunders, and many of them are very costly. You see, Minister, when we have to pay back traffic ticket money, that means the beds that we so surely need in the hospitals, not available. Patient then told, no bed available. Go home. Or you might buy a cardboard and sleep in the corridor at Cornwall Regional. $500 for the cardboard? So, Mr. President, something is wrong at the ministry. For the first time, such an error takes place in 62 years of independence. Minister, I don't want it to happen again. So I'm bringing to you that this is not just a transcription issue. It's a fundamentally constitutional issue. And it's not just at Ministry of Finance. How can the Attorney General certify that the Appropriation Bill was constitutional when obviously it wasn't? Was there a lacking in due diligence by those who are charged under the Constitution to certify that bills coming from the Parliament are proper? You know, Mr. President, that's a dangerous thing. Because the next thing you will hear is that a government department acts contrary to the law, but the Attorney General Office certifies it. And Senator Bryan, you know I do my research. There's a particular matter, Mr. President, that a government agency acted wrongfully, unlawfully on. And the Attorney General's chambers has told that agency, who acted contrary to the law, that they have no legal or moral, listen, no legal or moral duty to correct it. Let me say it. I do not think you will agree, Senator Bryan, that a moral issue, the morality of a decision, is a legal issue. So to say they have no legal or moral duty to make the changes and to conform with the law of the country tells me that the Attorney General of Chamber, which is capable of making errors, You leave me alone to this. This is not the SOE in which you was wrong. You know, Attorney General Carl Rattray once wrote a directive to the Ministry of Labour on a matter of industrial relations. And I wrote back to the ministry saying that the Attorney General's views was really politics dressed up in legal brief. To Carl Rattray's respect, he didn't pursue his opinion. And the courts every day has shown that opinions of attorney generals are not infallible. Oftentimes it is. Oftentimes it is. And so, Mr. President, I'm not surprised that the opinions of the Attorney General is not being shared widely on a matter relating to reports coming to the Parliament. Maybe there's a lack of confidence in the Attorney General chambers. And that is why this morning I asked, has there been an offer of resignation? Because for the Attorney General to have certified the constitutionality of what former Senator Clerk and now Member of Parliament and Minister is saying is not constitutional, that raises a serious issue. I dare say, when my friend Senator Braham was AG, such a rookie error could never have been made. Don't contradict me. Don't contradict me. You would never make such a rookie. You would never make such a rookie thing. When it comes to you, you're going to look over the bill and satisfy yourself. And no. It's not 1,000 pages. It's about 2 or 3 pages. The Appropriation Bill is not the big yellow book. It's something look like this. So don't give me about how much pages. It is this. This is what we pass. All them talk about in the budget and red card. It is this that is important. No, man, the red card is for the government. You see, Mr. President, this blunder, this so-called transcription blunder, is akin to a football game in which a player on the goal line uses his hands to stop the ball from going into the goal. Senator Fitzhenley will tell you, VAR or no VAR, that is an automatic red card. That's an automatic red card. And as a Manchester United fan, you know we benefit from that. And so, Liverpool in defense, they get 3 yesterday. Mr. President, when we're talking about a blunder like this, I've outlined that this is not the first blunder. There's a serial set of blunders under this minister. A serial set of blunders under this minister. I've pointed out that the opinion of the Attorney General doesn't seem to be getting the respect that AG's report got when a certain senator was AG. And it raises the issue whether the AG has the confidence of the government.
It says about 4 times, you know. But I wanted to
Repetition is the mother of knowledge.
I wanted
and I want the country to understand.
I wanted to say something to you.
You're going to interrupt me? Let me finish
Senator
now.
Hill, do not interrupt me.
Let me finish now.
I just want to say something. Hold on a little bit. You were absent for a while from the Senate. You don't have to make up the absence in a one day, you know. You can stretch it out.
Mr. Mr. President.
You can stretch it out, declare.
Mr. President, you spoke
don't have to
about,
come with
you
the 2
spoke
week
about
after.
being ungracious earlier. Physician, take your own medicine. Physician, take your own medicine.
No, but when I say ungracious, I mean you're ungracious
No,
to a female. You and I can be ungracious to each
President, I just yield back my extra minutes earlier. And I am not yielding anymore here. I'm simply using up the time allotted to me to say, does the Attorney General retain the confidence of the government of Jamaica? Yes, important, because I don't get no answer yet. And the people of Jamaica want answer to it. And I want answer. So because people are trying to make this as a transcription issue. For me, it's about conformity with the Constitution, as outlined by the minister. And if we are getting opinions that are not consistent with the Constitution, something wrong. If we are getting blunders after blunders out of the Ministry of Finance, something wrong. And you know what is wrong, Mr. President? As I take my seat, we have the wrong government. Time come. And the people of Jamaica, in the recent local government election, by 52%, as indicated, time come for this wrong government to go. May it please you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Brown. And if you thought that my comment about you going on a bit was ungracious, it really wasn't meant to be.
You and I come a far way.
Very far.
So I understand. I understand what you're doing.
When somebody said that you played on the football team and somebody else over there said that's not true, I can verify that you did not play on the Manning Cup football team.
No, you can't verify that. You can't verify that. I have the pictures and the minutes on the field at stadium to prove. What you can say is that when I played, I was so much smaller than I am today that you might not have recognized it was me.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Fitzhenley.
Thank you, sir. I don't intend to be long. As a matter of fact, I intend to teach Senator Brown a lesson in brevity. But I invite our colleagues to consider that for decades, for many years, our drafters, our transcriptors, the people who contribute to perfecting bills which are brought before the Senate have done so, and they have an impeccable track record. I think the angling of the opposition to make a meal, a mountain out of a molehill, in terms of seeking to politicize, in my view, an error made by one who had charge of transcribing is unbecoming. And I think it is unfair to the hard work of the people, the civil servants who contribute to perfecting these bills over the years.
Senator Bunting, please. Senator Bunting. Senator Bunting, please. Continue, please.
So I address you, Senator Bunting. I'm of the view, sir, that the attempt to, it is common knowledge that the transcribing of documents such as the Appropriations Bill and the contents therein is not a function of the political directorate. That is a matter of common knowledge, public record. And if there is any accounting to be had, it's the fact that this bill was entered into the lower house, it was passed, and so too in this, the upper house of Parliament. We all had the opportunity to have sight of it. So to grandstand an attempt to sensationalize an error made by a transcriber, to my mind, is an overreach on the part of the opposition. And it doesn't surprise me the attempts to denigrate and seek to place the error at the feet of the finance minister, who has presented the most far-reaching budget in terms of positive implications for a wide cross-section of the Jamaican people that has been presented in a long time. A budget that augurs well for our pensioners, our young people who want skills or to engage or enhance their skills via the HEART program. The ostensible attack on the finance minister appears to me it doesn't surprise me. I think it is a testament to his credible performance in putting forward a budget that every Jamaican can look and say, there is something there for me in this yellow book. I hear the arguments concerning the Constitution and a suggestion that the transcription error might offend the Constitution of Jamaica. Again, I find the arguments advanced by the opposition to be not persuasive. I don't find it persuasive. And, Senator Brown, I don't find that the arguments rise to the level of a constitutional breach, such as the Suppression of Crimes Act in the 1970s. I don't find that the breach or the error rises to the level of the immunity certificates that the Supreme Court found unconstitutional a few years ago. So I invite the opposition to resist the temptation to politicize an error which was made by transcribers.
Senator Bunting, you know better than that, you know. You know better than that. Senator Bunting, you want to just withdraw that?
That would be the right.
It is the rule of Parliament.
Allow me to speak. Allow me to speak. The senator said that the Constitutional Court had deemed the certificates unconstitutional, certificates of good faith, not certificates of immunity.
I prefer you don't even discuss that, you know.
No, that matter was dealt with. It was on appeal. The validity of the certificates were upheld, and he knows that, and he omitted it to mislead the Senate.
Yeah, but
nevertheless,
if somebody, okay, go ahead, continue to your conclusion.
Nevertheless, if my language was unparliamentary, I will withdraw the statement that the senator, was misleading.
Okay, thank you very much.
And I would just say he has a strange relationship with the truth. And a strange
You can continue, please, Senator.
Thank you, sir. I close by reiterating my point that the move to make heavy weather of an error of transcription that the error was not in the estimates of expenditure, but in the Appropriations Bill, is to be harsh and to be draconian in criticism of our civil servants, our technocrats, the drafters who have had an impressive track record at getting it right over the years. I don't find the arguments concerning the Constitution being negatively engaged to be persuasive. And I said to you, Senator Brown, I've heard your submissions, and your attempt to make a meal of this error which we are correcting by a passage of this amendment. It's not the bombshell that you make it out to be. No, it's not. It's not. It's not the bombshell. It's not. It's not the bombshell, sir.
Senator Hill. Yes, sir. I said he knows. Senator Hill, please. Continue.
I support passage of this bill, sir, and I invite my colleagues to offer support as well in a timeless manner. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Minister? Sorry, Minister. Senator Bunting?
Could you know, Mr. President, I hadn't intended to speak, but
you have been provoked.
you know, I hadn't intended to speak on the Appropriations Act, and Senator Fitzhenley is scurrying out of the chamber. The Bible says the wicked fleeth when no one pursueth.
Oh my God.
Anyway, I will send you the chapter and verse, but trust me. But you know, since Senator Fitzhenley raises this matter about attempting to denigrate the transcriber, and he speaks about, he tries to make this about an ostensible attack on civil servants, public servants.
Proverbs 28 verse 1.
Proverbs 28 verse 1. That should help you.
You to tell me is you quoted, you know.
Yes.
No, but it's not. You tell him.
I am telling you. I've been assisting.
He has been his assistant. Just like Appa's breaking news.
But you know, I couldn't sit today and listen to Senator Fitzhenley try and spin the opposition's concerns, and in particular Senator Brown's concerns, as if he's trying to spin it as if the attack is on the transcribers or the public servants who have an impressive track record, and how unbecoming that is. And I listened with incredulity that the member of the government side, on the same day that it was most unfortunate that we are here paying tribute to Ms. Curtis, the same government, the member of the same government that has not withdrawn the published letter to the clerk, despite widespread demands for the speaker to do so. The member of the same government who is now talking about it's unbecoming to attack a civil servant doesn't see the irony that on this very same day when we are honoring Ms. Curtis, that this issue of a letter of reprimand, unlawfully issued, and issued to publicly when she was on the eve of retirement, in the twilight of her career as a public servant and as a parliamentary officer, that he doesn't see the irony of raising these issues. You know, this morning I didn't get up to contribute because I know the humble public servant that Ms. Curtis is. She would not have wanted to be made controversial, and so I did not. But I couldn't sit down here and listen to that allegation being made when we see the hit job being performed on Miss Curtis by a certain media house.
Nationwide, man.
By a certain
That
media
Alpha
house.
used to work with.
By these leaks from some internal audit report.
Breaking news leaks. Breaking
You know,
news leaks.
we really should not in the Senate allow this flagrant disregard for established norms to go unaddressed. And, you know, I couldn't sit today without joining on behalf of the opposition, and in fact all well-thinking public servants, in demanding a public apology to Ms. Curtis as a withdrawal of the letter accompanied by a public apology as an important step towards healing the wrong done to a senior and highly regarded public servant on the eve of her retirement. So, you know, Senator Brown, you could better speak on how it violated the basic principles of good employment relations.
Senator Bunting. Senator Bunting.
Senator Gale could.
You just craft the argument that you're putting forward within the context of what the bill.
But I am responding. We are having a debate. The matter
Okay.
was
I understand.
raised by
I'm
Senator
just asking you to be careful.
So I am responding to the issues that he raised. He spoke about attempts to denigrate the public servants. He called it unbecoming. He suggested it was an ostensible attack.
And he was allowed to.
And he was allowed to do that. So I am now saying, well, here, since you've raised that issue, I am responding to what is a real example of denigration of public servants, what is really unbecoming, disgusting, and inexcusable behavior. And I think, as I said, it is important that in that context, that the record show I could not sit here and not get up and in defense and in the interest of demanding a public apology to Ms. Curtis on this day that we honor her in the Senate. Thank you.
You know, Senator Morris always quarreled with me when I intervene in things, you know. But still I persist, and perhaps I shouldn't. Anyway, let me hold my tongue. Eh? No, I just recall, you know, that there was a member of the opposition that had raised a very serious allegation against Ms. Curtis once, to the effect that she was hiding a document concerning an Integrity Commission report that affected him and Senator Bunting. Nobody never said anything. Not a soul, not said nothing. Senator, no, not Bobby Montague. You want me to tell you who?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, in closing, I think I just want to clarify a few points because there has been quite a bit said and not all of it on point with the reality of what is before us today. And you know, there are a few things that concern me, but I won't detain this chamber unduly with them. I will try to remain focused on just a few points. One is an inaccuracy which was uttered by Senator Brown, where he said that the minister is now saying that the bill is unconstitutional. And this is his interpretation of the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons. And I want to say that that is not what the memorandum purports to say. I explained earlier that the statutory expenditures do not need to be in the Appropriations Act because they are already ostensibly voted on before, because the House has approved the legislation which provides for their expenditure. This is how it works. That is protected under Section 116(3) and 4, which states that those matters do not need to be included in the Appropriations Bill. And it is in that context that they're being excluded for good order when because of a transcription error, the movement of numbers in one column when it should have been the movement under another, so that the nature of the error is not a substantive or constitutional one. It would not, in fact, invalidate the bill on that basis, so far as we understand. The issue is being about the people's business. As soon as the error was identified by the technical team responsible therefore, and as soon as it was discovered, it was brought to the attention of the political directorate, and as soon as it was brought to attention, the process was started that culminated in our presence here today. Every effort was made to act with efficacy and efficiency to correct the error. And I want to say that I feel very badly for the team listening to the opposition this morning, because every word I know that they uttered about blunder and who need humbling and all of these things, which are clearly very much directed at the minister, notwithstanding, that's where the aim of all the aggression is at, but that's not where you're putting it. You're putting it when you speak about something being wrong. When you look at the work that is actually necessary and the work that you are criticizing, you are putting your effort in the wrong place, and it is regrettable. Because the people who have been doing the work care very deeply about the work that they have done, and they care very deeply about the error that was made. No, where there is malfeasance, where there's misfeasance, where there's incompetence, where these fundamental, persons must be held to account. But where an error has been made, it is an error, and we are here to correct it. And I think your efforts to try to get at the minister because you're vexed about the red card, and that came through quite clearly. Let me just say that every red card he delivered on a substantive issue was well deserved. So your efforts to now try and get back at him, regrettable. It wasn't his error. And your efforts to connect dots on all kind of pages that are not even in the same book are conflating issues, and again, regrettable. I am answering. I am not defending. I am answering. I am defending the irrelevant and unfortunate comments which you have made this morning under disguised.
Senator Brown, you know that people allowed you to talk. Senator Bunting, please allow the minister to speak.
Your unfortunate comments, disguised as debate, are what I am responding to this morning, in defense of the civil servants who I know feel very deeply about the error that was made. And they have acted as best as possible to correct it. And when Senator Braham said that what would have been required to pick up this error would have been not going through the 3 pages, but going through the 1,000, and the refusal of Senator Brown to recognize that shows his lack of understanding of the process that resulted in this. The transcription took place in the estimates of expenditure, which is the big book, and that was the point that was being made. So I just want to say, Mr. President, you know, sometimes I'm very willing to just paper over.
Senator Brown, will you stop it? You already get a warning from home about interrupting people. I'm going to repeat it. Calm down, man.
Mr. President, let me do that. Let me do that, Mr. President. It's something that I enjoy, talking to you. So let me continue along that road. Yes. But it was, I think, you know, I'm not gonna go back to this call for the need for humbling. I'm not going to go back there, as unfortunate as it is. And I am quite clear that you meant it. We are quite clear that you meant it. So we know the red card, Bonio, we get it, we do. But the issue which is before us today is about ensuring that we're able to address the people's business. The one issue that I want to correct before I sit so that we can complete this process was, just for the record, to state that states of emergency have not been declared unconstitutional, despite the continued repetition by, that's what he said. No. And if he said that once, he certainly said otherwise. And I understand your need to defend as well. I get that. No, I heard what he said and I wrote it down, and we can check Hansard next week for whoever has the time or the energy. But I want to just say, Mr. President, that there was no effort here to make this matter appear trivial. It's an important issue. It's the Appropriations Bill, and the government has not sought to treat with it otherwise. It is, in fact, why we are here so quickly and why the efforts have been made to move with alacrity to ensure that warrants can be issued as appropriate, so there is no disruption of the government's business. I want to, in that context, thank the technical team that identified and corrected the error, the members of the CPC and Legal Reform, who ensured that the amendment bill was drafted together with the members of the Ministry of Finance technical team to ensure that the corrections placed before us today stand us in good stead. And in that context, Mr. President, I ask for second reading of the bill.
Thank you, Minister. The question is that the bill be read for a second time. Those in favour? Against? Madam Clerk?
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Appropriation Act 2024 to exclude all expenditure classified as statutory expenditure and for connected matters, read a second time.
Thank you. The Senate will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. Thank you. I put clause 1. Those in favour? Against? I put clauses 2 and 3. I'm sorry. Okay. Very well. I put clause 2. Those in favour? Against? I put clause 3. Those in favour? Clause 3, I was putting.
Yes, Chairman. In order to vote on clause 3, could I get an answer to whether or not any warrant for 2024-25 has been paid out under Ed 1000, that is to the GG and staff, Ed 2000, Houses of Parliament, Ed 3000, Office of the Public Defender, Ed 5000, Office of the Auditor General, Ed 6000, Office of the Services Commission, Ed 7000, Office of the Children's Advocate, Ed 8000, Independent Commission of Investigators, Ed 9000, Integrity Commission, Ed 10,000, Independent Fiscal Commission, and certainly Ed 219, that's 2019, 20 and 19, pension. And also the Ed involving the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution and Ed 28,058 dealing with the judiciary. And I raise this because I'd like to vote on this. The question, I'd like to vote on this, but I want to know if since the 1st of April, any money have been allocated to these agencies in accordance with the unconstitutional bill that was passed 2 weeks ago.
Minister.
Mr. President, as I stated in detail earlier when I opened the debate, I explained that the warrants were being prepared in anticipation of the passage of this bill so that the team could act in a timely manner and ensure that there was no disruption in the operations of business.
Verbatim repeat.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President, the answer is no.
Thank you. So I put clause 3. Those in favour? Against? The ayes have it. I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Senator Brown, you're objecting to the title? No? I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Against? The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Those in favor? Against? I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendment. Minister?
Mr. President, might I ask for third reading of the bill?
Thank you. The question is that the bill be read for a third time. Those in favor? Against?
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Appropriation Act 2024 to exclude all expenditure classified as statutory expenditure and for connected matters read a third time and pass.
Thank you very much. Minister?
Mr. President, as indicated earlier, it is intended to take a ministerial statement by Senator Samuda, and in order to do so, I would ask that the item, statements by ministers, be recommitted.
Thank you very much, Minister. The question is that the bill entitled. Yes. Sorry.
Does the standing order put a limit in time for the statement by ministers?
I don't think that anybody has ever had to apply a time limit on Senator Samuda's presentations, because although they may be lengthy, they are usually extremely informative, necessary, and important. So I'm not considering that I'm going to have to put a time limit on him. The question is that the item statements by ministers be recommitted. Those in favor? Against? Senator Samuda.
Mr. President, thank you for colleagues for the recommittal, allowing me to bring an update on the debilitating drought that we are experiencing. Sorry? There are some issues that I believe require some clarity for the public based on national discourse, and I think it is important to update on same. I'm trying to see if this will oblige. Where is it I should be pointing? Okay. And I will run through the current drought conditions and the impact on the systems very quickly, because the Prime Minister would have gone through them, Mr. President, at length just earlier this week. So, President, I think it's important to note, firstly, that no parish has been spared the impact of drought conditions, and that there has been a disproportionate effect in the West. It's also important to note that we take very seriously the impact on our agricultural stakeholders, as well as indeed all of our citizens, because we are seeing the impact on business and indeed on households. Mr. President, Jamaica's current conditions are characterized by the traditional dry season, which would normally run from December to April each year. Based on the normal pattern, the period of lowest rainfall usually occurs in March, after which conditions gradually improve to a steady peak in May. The primary peak that Jamaica has in its rainfall is actually experienced in October. One driver that I've spoken about in this chamber before of the current extreme dry conditions in the region is the El Nino phenomenon. That phenomenon has affected weather conditions right across the globe. We're seeing stories virtually daily of major developed economies having challenges because of said drought. In October 2023, it's important to note that we actually experienced below normal rainfall in what is our usual peak. This impacted St. James, Hanover, Westmoreland, and St. Elizabeth disproportionately. Now, colleagues should note that that would have shifted coming off of last year, February, when we had the worst drought in our history. We had spoken of the fact that the weather patterns had shifted where your primary rainfall had moved from the northeast of the island to the northwest. It appears to be shifting back gradually. In November, rainfall amounts remained low and in fewer parishes. But in December, we did have a significant rainfall event. The problem when you get these sorts of torrential downfall, you have a significant runoff and it does not necessarily recharge your aquifers in the way that you would want. In January, rainfall showed that the island, January of 2024, rainfall showed that the island was starting to express its usual dry season characteristics. And I think what we would have seen is that in January, as far as January, we saw that Westmoreland and Hanover was only getting 57 and 56% of its traditional rainfall at that time. So if you look at your screens now, you would see the impact of that lack of rainfall in February. We'll note that there is manual work that is done to compile this data. We are working to digitize the network, so March's data will be ready shortly, but all indications are that the trend would have worsened. Right? Now this shows the darker auburn color shows extreme impact because of lack of rainfall. Now, when one contrasts that, now February and March are your dry months, traditionally. When one contrasts that against your 30-year average, looking at the 1971 to 2000 mean average, you understand that, yes, it is your driest months, February and March, but it wouldn't have had the sort of all-island dryness that would have been expressed. Now, something that I was speaking to a farmer in the room about earlier is the standard precipitation index and its monitor, and it shows the moisture that would have, the moisture measures that we would have looked at between January to February. So it shows the significant impact in the west, in particular Westmoreland into the Negril area. Mr. President, the projections from the Met Service and validated by the Caribbean Meteorological Organization shows the rainfall outlook for April, May, and June for colleagues to take note of. Now, whereas we expect to come out of severe drought conditions over the next 2 months, you will notice that the projections show Western Jamaica to continue facing severe drought or to facing reduced rainfall. Now, this is obviously cause for concern. Mr. President, this has affected some 64 systems island-wide for the National Water Commission, with 47 of those systems coming in the west, in the east rather, and 17 systems being affected in the Western Division, in particular Hanover and Westmoreland, as we would have mentioned. And just for the purpose of the Hansard, just to note that the Logwood treatment plant is running at 50%, the New Mills treatment plant and the Kendall systems are running at 65 and 50% respectively, and Bulstrode is down by about 20% in Westmoreland. This has created a debilitating effect on systems in that area. Now, the nature of the problem, we believe, and as I run through this, just lists for those colleagues who wish to see it by parish. So for instance, I know Senator Morris would be interested in the fact that the Ita Barrel system, as we would have seen, is actually bone dry. That spring has run totally dry. So it is actually the well that we're actually pulling on supplies from to give that area. So you're seeing significant impact nationally, and obviously this will be circulated to colleagues just for review. Now, what this situation requires, Mr. President, is an intervention by way of additional trucking to communities that are affected, but certainly larger interventions where there is greater impact. Mr. President, the allocations that we have made to facilitate this emergency intervention is 150 million Jamaican dollars that will be channeled into trucking. There are 13 seats that are assessed to not be affected in the way that others, constituencies, that are not affected by the chronic drought. These are largely the plains of Kingston and St. Andrew and the plains of St. Catherine. So we all know where those constituencies would be. So 50 constituencies will be allocated a base figure of $1.5 million to facilitate trucking through the usual mechanisms. We have made additional allocations to the members of Parliament in Clarendon, in St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Hanover, and St. Ann Northwest because of a major system failure in Brownstown. No, Northeast has no such allocation. Northeast St. Ann doesn't require that allocation. However, Mr. President, we've also made allocations to the municipalities in the municipal corporations in Clarendon of $5 million to supplement their additional work, St. Elizabeth of $5 million, Westmoreland for $5 million, and in Hanover $7.5 million, and $7.5 million in the municipal corporation of St. Ann. So, President, this funding we know doesn't solve every single problem when you contemplate what trucking is and isn't as a fulsome response, but we believe it does give members of Parliament, the municipalities in areas that are predominantly affected, the ability to respond to critical infrastructure needs, as well as citizens that are particularly vulnerable from water scarcity, Mr. President. We expect, which is why I showed the projections before, that this will need to last approximately 4 weeks. So if we do need to make further interventions, we absolutely will. I want to also note that there is an intervention taking place through RADA and NIC, which I will not go into today, for our farmers, especially in the worst affected areas in the West. There's also a $100 million trucking program which exists in the Ministry of Local Government, which continues to serve communities that are outside of the utility footprint. But, Mr. President, trucking is the absolute worst, most inefficient, expensive way to distribute water. It is the short, medium, and long-term infrastructural investments that will make this country water resilient. And, Mr. President, it is why this government has focused on these projects. For the benefit of colleagues, though I have shared similar maps before, doesn't matter, you can hear it again. You've spread the misinformation regularly. We have to spread the correct information regularly. Mr. President, you will notice a significant geographic spread of projects. You will notice the significant spread geographically of projects that shows no political favor with how we are investing the people's money, Mr. President. Now, I will not spend the time to go through every single infrastructure project, but this list will also be made to colleagues. Well, the 1.5 hours reflects the volume of money and the heavy investment and the focus this government is indeed putting into the water sector. I hear you. I soon come to you. Now, Mr. President, there are some major projects that the country should be aware of, because these are the projects that make you significantly more resilient. The first is Rio Cobre, the water treatment plant in Content St. Catherine. Now, why is this project that important? We would all recall the several statements that would have come between February of last year up to this point on our water resilience. We should note that this project, when complete, will pump 15.5 million imperial gallons into the network that supplies Spanish Town, Portmore, and Kingston once complete. Now, why is that important? What does that figure contextually mean? Well, last year, in February, in the worst of our drought, in the worst of our worst drought, we were short 12 million gallons. This intervention will all but fix the source issues in that regard. But we also need to contemplate, Mr. President, what I would say pre-NRW and post-NRW. This chamber should be aware and should recall that a project started in 2015 called the Non-Revenue Water Project for Kingston and St. Andrew saw significant work done over the last 8 to 9 years on the distribution mains, the storage, and the pressure monitors throughout Kingston and St. Andrew, and indeed throughout Portmore. In 2015, Kingston and St. Andrew required 55 million gallons daily to service its needs. In 2024, Kingston and St. Andrew requires 38 million gallons daily, despite growth in population and increased commercial activity. That's the volume of leakage that we have cut with the non-revenue water project. So you are more resilient just by fixing the distribution network. 55 million gallons daily, down to 38 million gallons from conservation and from cutting leaks. So that's the import. So let's not have... I did acknowledge that the project started in 2015. But I will go to a part of Bobby's legacy shortly. Sorry? There's never been a lack of non-revenue water intention. There's never been this volume of non-revenue water investment and commitment and actual volume of projects. The reality is the programs we have made this country more water resilient. But I want to touch on the issue of rural water. There are two things this chamber must be aware of. Is that the largest investment made in rural water in a single year previous to this year was in excess of 800 million. I believe it was in 2017 by this government. This year we've allocated 1.6 billion Jamaican dollars to the Rural Water Supply Limited, doubling the largest previous investment to ensure that we're able to invest in rural systems. But Mr. President, there are long-standing projects that have not happened, which I'm happy to report are now on the cusp of being a reality. And for all of those of us who are either residents or have family members in rural Jamaica, these will mean something to all of us. The Agwater Vale and Jordan Run scheme in southeast St. Mary, the Mason Hall scheme in western St. Mary, Albert Town and Ulster Spring in southern Trelawney, the Union and Balaclava scheme in northeast St. Elizabeth, the Port Morant and Eric Castle scheme in eastern St. Thomas, and the Green Park in Higginstown and Bamboo scheme in southeast and southwest St. Anne. These projects will see in excess of $36 million invested over the next 3 years and will start this year, Mr. President. We're happy to report that the project unit is being set up now and we're going to procurement shortly. Mr. President, that is in the budget space. So our legacy in rural water will be ensuring that the utility footprint of the utility in Jamaica, whether through municipal systems or NWC, goes in excess of 90%. We will ensure, Mr. President, that though we've already done work to improve water service delivery and utility reliability for over 300,000 Jamaicans over the last 2 years, Mr. President, that we expect that number to go upward of 800,000 over the next 2 years, Mr. President. But that brings me to some things that I've seen circulating on WhatsApp and all over the place around the rapid response system, Mr. President. And I saw a video that showed some old trucks that were bought by former Minister Blythe. Firstly, if they were bought by former Minister Blythe, you wouldn't expect them to still be alive today. That's the first contemplation. The next issue, and what Jamaicans should be aware of, is that those trucks, and should remember, because, memories are short, right? Person should remember that we got all of a year out of those trucks because they were not fit for purpose for Jamaica's terrain. The gearboxes did not work. That the government even explored legal action in trying to recover the funds because of that. So sharing something that collapsed under a former PNP administration and trying to put it on this administration is quite something. Now, we also need to remember, and allow me to bring this up, the project was not, because you can't call it a good system, it was a disaster. The rapid response system was a disaster. But it was also fraught with audit challenges and several corruption allegations, Mr. President. And it was shut down by this administration to cut off a ridiculous feeding tree for the former administration's political activists. Mr. President, that program was cut off by this administration because it presided over significant leakage, and we're not taking back. We're not taking it back. That's a fact, Mr. President. Mr. President, this administration transferred the assets to the Ministry of Local Government, so the assets are in use for service delivery of the Jamaican people without any governance issues. We have also continued to invest on a monthly basis, rather not just on a monthly basis, on an annual basis. Last year we bought 8 additional trucks for the National Water Commission. This year we're in procurement right now for 8 additional trucks, and we will buy another 8 next year. And if we continue needing space, we will build in that emergency response, Mr. President. But make no bones about it, and the people watching at home must know that those trucks were from a failed PNP investment, and it also hurt Jamaica's water delivery systems because a lot of the money was wasted, Mr. President. And we're not going to pull back our resolve from that fact. It is a legacy of failure. So this commitment to return to that failure is a commitment to return to a corrupt, failing system, Mr. President. The other issue that I'm going to speak to briefly, Mr. President, is the Western Water, the North Coast Water Supply Improvement Scheme that we are working on. Now, you will note that it is an integrated project. The project contemplates water storage, transmission mains, upgrade of water treatment plants, and significant investment. What you're looking at here is $209 million of engineering solutions to make sure that from St. Anna all the way around to Westmoreland, there are significant upgrades of the existing infrastructure. But because you're going through a particular climatic event in Westmoreland, I think it's important for people to understand exactly what we're doing in this area and where we are. Now, to contemplate Westmoreland's water, you have to think as far away as the Martha Brae. Because what happens is that the Great River, because in Great River serves a lot of Western St. James. Because majority of your water coming from Martha Brae is like pouring water into a grater. It just pours out. That line is significantly degraded. It is also not the size that you require for a growing St. James. It is why later this year we will start construction to put in a 36-inch ductile iron main from the Martha Brae into St. James, reducing pressure in Western St. James from the systems that are in Hanover, which also support St. James. We will also upgrade the Terminal Reservoir and the Appleton Hall Reservoir in St. James, which will take the pressure off of the Great River system. But, Mr. President, we are also doing the engineering assessments and drawings now for the Great River upgrade system, because that treatment plant is particularly old. We're also doing the scoping for the Flint River Reservoir in Hanover, and we're also looking at the system that would have been commissioned by then P.J. Patterson, I believe in 2001 or 2002, at the Logwood Water Treatment Plant, which has outlived its time. It's now due for upgrade. It's an old system. A 20-year-old water treatment plant requires upgrades. So we are doing those designs. But, Mr. President, we've also looked very carefully at what is required. And the first major investment on the treatment capacity will be on the Roaring River plant, and we're also doing the Hartford tank to upgrade it to a 1.5 million gallon system, and we're looking at the wetland, the Westland Mountains tank, etc. Well, Mr. President, the major line that goes into the grill comes from about Rossies. That line is 9 inches and leaks profusely. There is no way 9 inches of pipe can carry the volume of water that you require in that part of the country. So if you look at, they're doing reverse osmosis, so they won't have an impact in that space. That's not the particular challenge that you have with them. But 9 inches cannot carry your existing commercial activity or what you hope to continue to see by way of growth with housing and hotel stock along that corridor. So we will upgrade that line to a 24-inch ductile iron pipe. That project will be grouped this year. We're breaking ground this year. Okay, we're in the final stages of what we're working on with that. That will happen this year. Now, those 2 pipelines will be $70 million investment into the people of Westmoreland and Hanover and St. James. It will take 2 years of construction because ultimately those pipes aren't also on a shelf. So you order the pipes and then they come in, but you have to do some of the engineering work. But this is the largest investment into Western water resilience in a very, very long time, Mr. President. So I say that to give residents the comfort that we are thinking in a very holistic manner. There's an integrated, well-thought-out plan, and that is why I've met with citizens at Lagwood. That is why just last week I was at the McGrill All-Age School on the West End meeting with citizens. That is why the week before I was in Lucy meeting with citizens. We have been meeting with them and facing them with the water concerns. It is also why I quite like the West. Quite like the West. I quite like all of Jamaica, in fact. But, Mr. President, you know, I soon come to the politics. I soon come to the politics. But, Mr. President, so you like to throw a stone and then when it comes back to you, you don't like it. Mr. President, we also, in March, because we recognize the impact of the Lagwood system and other systems going as far as Bulls Road in Westmoreland, we had allocated to the National Water Commission an additional $30 million to facilitate emergency response in Westmoreland and Hanover. And that is why the teams have been working 24 hours a day on shift to ensure that citizens are indeed protected, are indeed serviced with water. Any assertion to the contrary is false, it is political mischief, and it must be rejected, Mr. President. Well, Mr. President, I turn to one other large-scale investment that we are making, and that is the Greater Mandeville water supply. Former Chairman Hill, I'm sure you're very familiar with this particular scheme. Now, Mr. President, when you hear the Greater Mandeville water supply system, there is an assumption that it is an investment solely in Mandeville. It's just the name of the project. Communities from as far as Pepper in St. Elizabeth have already benefited from increased distribution investment. Mr. President, it benefits this project and this investment benefits New Green to the north and Spurtree and Eglinton and Knockpatrick, Georges Valley, Mayfair and Old England to the east. Hopetown to Waltham is getting a 16-inch pipe, which is now completely laid and is being pressure tested as we speak. Greenvale to Kingsland is now advanced and the contractor has been selected and is about to start the work. A new 24-inch pipeline is to be undertaken and drilled from the old Pepper site going all the way up to Gutters, Mr. President. Now the source is being completed. We're doing the well work at Pepper. But we need to understand the areas that are benefiting. When then Chairman Hill and then Minister Hill signed off on these projects, he did it to benefit the communities of Downs, Knockpatrick, Newport, Hopetown, Greenvale, Waltham, Mandeville, Pepper itself, New Green, Brumalia, Marshall Pen. It also was signed off and scoped to benefit communities like Greenvale to Kingsland, certainly not a constituency represented by anyone on our side. It also was signed off to ensure that the Hopetown to Waltham line benefits several areas. It involves, Mr. President, a full project estimate of just over $3 billion. We have $2.5 billion of contracts in place. So this work is well advanced and is happening. But, Mr. President, we expect that major work to be complete by 2025. Now I turn to a series of comments that I heard and saw on video on my way here from another former chairman of the NWC in opposition leader of the Senate. Comments made from a community of Redberry. That community has 55% coverage in terms of pipe coverage and water supply. Mr. President, the designs are done to do the following 45%. But in all the discussions of the water frustration, former chairman who should know, that area has a particularly, one of the highest areas actually in parish of theft. And that has actually derailed the project twice before, even predating me, in terms of breakage of the system and constant repairs. So the money goes into repairs when you've done the scoping for the project. The former Minister of National Security didn't encourage in that video anyone to sign up with the Water Commission and pay their bills and to report theft where they saw it. He also didn't discourage residents from blocking a national highway as a former Minister of National Security over water that is being impacted by theft in that space. I was particularly disappointed when I saw the video, Mr. President. The other interesting thing about an area called Redberry. No, you can wait till you speak. Wait till you speak. Wait till you speak. Another interesting thing about Redberry is that the road, though not my area, the road complaint, Mr. President, is about a municipal road. The last time I checked, that municipality has been led by that side for a prolonged period and nothing has been done to the road. The full estimate of road work in that area is a funny number. It's approximately $400 million. So if they hadn't if they hadn't had theft at the municipal council of $400 million, they could have fixed all the roads for the people in Redberry. But however, Mr. President, this notion that no one has visited, former Minister Warmington visited the community.
1 minute, Senator Samuda. Point of order raised by Senator Brown.
That when statements, especially a long statement like this is being made, it is circulated to the opposition, so we are able to deal with it.
I am supposed to rule on it, Senator Golden Campbell, not you. You'd have to stand up behind Sister Sinclair, I tell you that.
And the minister
yes.
has not paid us the courtesy
of
sharing this statement.
So you understand that
so
he's
could
not,
I ask that it be provided
you understand that it's not hasn't paid the courtesy, so it's not really a standing.
It is I certainly
it's
think
not a point of order.
It's not a point of order.
No. So
it's just a point of discourtesy.
Thank you. We can move on. Go ahead, Senator. You hear that?
No, man, next time we'll circulate. Apologies. But moving on. Mr. President, it's important to note that the first phase of upgrades to that roadway will be undertaken at approximately $100 million, and we expect the tender to be published next week as per previous commitment by the Member of Parliament after commitment and allocation made by former Minister Warmington. So, sometimes in politics you call for something you already know is going to happen, to give the impression to citizens that you had some role in this. But the water in the area, I left the team this morning looking at the list of projects and capital works for that area over the last 30 years to see if we could find any works in this area, because this problem has been a prolonged one. If the former chairman of NWC had ever signed off any works for South Manchester. I know this former chairman had, but I'm not saying he never do it. I'm just saying I don't find any yet. So if you signed off any capital works for South Manchester, as chairman, I would love to see them, to see what was the benefit of that, because I don't know of any. Mr. President, the issue of drought is a complex one. It is exacerbated by the chronic disinvestment in our water infrastructure over the last 40 years. But this government is taking the issue seriously. The government takes the impact on our people very serious, and it weighs on us. It is why we're making the emergency allocations. But it is why, President, we're not shy about the major capital works that we're investing in, because as has happened in Kingston, we expect the country to be.
You soon finish?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because it's 1:20, so I'm going to ask that the minister just take the...
Mr. President, the time being 1:20, might the Senate be permitted to continue beyond 1:30 to complete the business of the day?
Members have heard the question. Those in favor? Against? Minister Samuda.
Mr. President, we're investing in Western water resilience. We are doing the technical work to look at the expansion and replacement of the Hermitage Dam wall, a dam that is 95 years old, 45 years past its design expectation. We are also doing the design work on the Mona Reservoir for its expansion as a part of the Mahogany Vale system designed some 100 years ago, Mr. President. We are ensuring that we are making interventions this year for those who are most vulnerable and living in water-scarce areas by way of distribution of 10,000 black tanks. Colleagues should also recall that we're midway in installing 3,000 water harvesting systems in 14 constituencies, which were predominantly on the east and worst affected last year in our worst drought, complementary because of the support of the IDB. Mr. President, we're making these critical national investments to counter the disinvestment made in our water sector over the 40-year period. Now, I will not sit back and allow misinformation to prevail, to lead citizens to any view that is not consistent with what is being done within the water sector, Mr. President. I can safely say, and without fear of rebuke, there has been no political interference in the distribution of projects. We have ensured that citizens, as you see from the map, which is why I showed it, right across the length and breadth of this country, 300,000 of them have benefited from our water work, Mr. President. But we're also not going back to the nonsensical wastage that existed in the past. We're investing in giving people pipe water in their house, Mr. President, not buying trucks that spoil 1 year after and then running up mouth about it. Mr. President, we're going to have a tough 4 weeks ahead with rainfall. We don't have time for the political nonsense when we need to be making sure that people get water and that there's oversight in things like the trucking process to make sure that no rogue elements creep into a solid national program, Mr. President. The misinformation must stop. I thank you, Mr. President.
I've been charged by the opposition to respond to the... No.
Senator
the
Brown.
Opposition spokesperson here will respond. So I've been designated to respond and to ask questions after. Yeah. Mr. President, the minister has spoken for 34 minutes in a statement by minister. To me, it seems abusive, but that's to me. It certainly can be agreed that it was discourteous not to have provided the opposition with a copy of the statement. But such is the nature of things. President, much of what my friend Minister Samuda has announced was announced 2 weeks ago in his appropriation debate, appropriation bill debate, in which he spoke for an hour and a half. Much of what he has said, the Prime Minister spoke in the other place with a 22-page statement. Minister Floyd Green have spoken. Minister Local Government have spoken. I see on TV the people of St. Thomas, despite all the talks of government ministers, are still without water. I've seen the people, who is that talking? A neophyte? I've seen the people in Negril, including tourists, demonstrating for water. What is clear is that despite the propaganda, the promise of investment, the people not getting water. Mr. President, this morning at 7 o'clock, I'm WhatsApping a friend abroad, and I said to her, I'm going to the Senate today, but I may not be able to do so as someone who's bid. Because in the Portmore pipes, the water was extremely low and not coming in the shower. A friend of mine who lives in Angels, and I had that conversation, and I told him, boy, I'm going to the Senate, but water pressure low. He said, I don't have no water in my yard. So the experience, despite, you call him, it's Gary, call him. Despite the propaganda, despite the so-called information, despite the announce and re-announce and re-announce investment, the reality of the people is no water. But none said it better than their own Prime Minister, who in a post-mortem of the February 26th local government election, said one of the biggest problems everywhere him go was water. Water. So clearly, Minister Samuda, what needs to be done is to get the water to the people and stop announcing, re-announcing, re-announcing projects. When you get the water to the people, then the 52% who voted for change will give you an ease up. But until then, what the people are feeling is an illusion. Every time you come with this map, and you see all of the that, I would think there's no water problem. But I want to thank Ian Ailes, the opposition spokesperson on water, for provoking another long speech from you. The answer, Mr. President, as I close, is not long speeches. It's delivering the water. A friend of mine in a Caribbean country once said, Lamy, my instructions to the people, to the government, was stop announcing projects. What we wanted to do is announce the completion of projects. So, Senator Samuda, groundbreaking is not providing the water. When you put the water in and the people in Myersville get the water, then we can talk. When I in Portmore do have to send abroad and say, no water, not there today. By the way, Senator Gill, the pressure came back up and I got a shower. A shower? Yeah, in the bathroom. Point I'm making, my friend, Mr. Samuda, get the water to the people. Stop announcing, re-announcing, re-announcing. When you do that, we will applaud you. For now, my friend, all you're doing is just spreading propaganda. May it please you, Mr. President.
Minister, no. You have a question? You have a question?
Mr. President, the minister said in his statement that it would take about 400 million to provide water to the Redberry community.
No, he never said so.
For roads. And then he made reference to some historical fraud. He he made reference to some historical fraud that they...
Senator, I don't have the statement either, but I remember he said 400 million. Anyway, him there can clarify.
Yes, for the Redberry Road, I think it was related to the Redberry community. So it was road or water? To roads. Forest Redberry. Right, and he made some reference to a historical fraud at Manchester Municipal Corporation, which by the court records was nowhere near 400 million. But is he aware that the tax administration of Jamaica has paid more than that 400 million for an unoccupied building in Mandeville? And maybe that can he say whether that continuing 4 million a month could be diverted, that wasted money could be diverted to providing the road and water to the citizens of Redberry? Question one.
So you're not answering that because that question not related to nothing at all. Go on,
but
Senator.
He raised it. It related. He raised it. He spoke about the 400 million.
All right, go on. Next question. Next question. Come.
The minister made reference to the porous Redberry Road being a municipal road and the fact that the Manchester Municipal Corporation is controlled by the opposition. But is he aware that for the last 8 years, the councillor for the porous division is a JLP councillor? And I'm sure 8 years is more than sufficient time for attention to be paid to that road. So if he's going to talk about responsibility, stop blaming other people. Stop blaming other people. For the last 8 years, that municipal road has been represented by the Jamaica Labour Party councillor. But, you know, what was most disturbing in the minister's statement is that his suggestion that the people of Redberry, or many people in Redberry, or let me put it this way, let me ask it as a question. Minister, you are suggesting that because of a high level of theft in the Redberry community, which you have just said, that the people of Redberry don't deserve water, and that is why they have not received water? Because if that is what the minister is suggesting, the residents of Redberry will soon have a chance to respond to you when time comes.
Mr. President, there is very little to respond to in both the response to my statement and the question. The point, however, sure.
No, so hold on a minute. Senator, It's a question for the minister. You want to wait or you want to answer the other one? No, you tell me. Senator Crawford, I recognize you from a seat other than your own. You seem to be promoting yourself. You're taking time and move up this side.
I move back this time, sir, because I know what's happening. Mr. President, I think we're in our third year of drought circumstances intermittently. And while it is very important for us to have conversations about how households receive water, there's also another aspect of our society, farming, that is dependent on water, in particular rainfall in some cases, but also on potable water for the poultry industry that is highly dependent on clean, fresh water, but is also a great subsidizer of our person's existence. A lot of people earn a living from having some form of chicken, both from the egg side and the poultry side. Our animal farms as well, which have been dependent on grass, have had to make great investment in bag feed due to the longer period of time grass takes to replenish itself, and on even hay. Some areas in St. Catherine have evolved as a hay producer because St. Catherine, as the minister highlighted, has maintained some rainfall. To that extent, is there a program that is in place for wells, for farms, to invest in wells, for example? A simple example, 20,000 layer birds will consume over 2,000 gallons a day of water, and will stop laying for 3 days if they don't get water one day. No, for 3 days. For 3 days. 20,000 will consume 2,000 gallons a day. So even when you have intermittent 3 days or 3 days on 3 days off, the farmer would then have to find both storage and access to 6,000 gallons for the day. Our wells in Jamaica, we are having the conversation, is very expensive, but is there any program for farmers to invest in that, because the uncertainty of rainfall, and in this case also the uncertainty of supply from the bird side, but also from the animal side, as cause for that concern. So most times the conversation is around household water, and so I'm hoping the next presentation will also include right. So but the farm water.
Thank you very much. So the minister is being invited to give us a presentation next week, perhaps on water as it relates to the farming.
So thank you, President. And 1 out of 3, I suppose, not bad for a question. But I'll start with the last intervention first. No, you responded, but I will respond to your response shortly. Related to the agricultural water first, because that's actually a genuine question. The Water Resources Master Plan table at the end of last year, I think, speaks to quite a bit of where well access is available and where likely to be granted. So I'd encourage anyone who is a holder of land looking at agricultural investment to look at that plan. We'd also bring your attention to the rainwater harvesting guidelines for planning that were tabled also at the same time towards the end of last year, because that also speaks to how rainwater harvesting should be used in agriculture and how to do it properly. Because as you've seen, even though we may have the same amount of rainfall for the year, you may get it in 2 hours and the runoff is not significant enough to recharge the aquifers. So yes, we do acknowledge and we are particularly concerned of the impact on our farmers, and that is why, as mentioned by Senator Brown, Minister Greenwood have given a separate statement on the intervention being made by RADA and indeed the NIC. But it would be remiss of me to not note that you are midway in construction in the Essex Valley project in St. Elizabeth, which is some $50 million US, and that in the budget book there is $750 million for the investment in the Pedro Plains irrigation scheme, a project that has been on the books for 50 years and not executed. So expect the mapping and the engineering to be complete this year, allowing for construction next year. On that note, I transition into response to the response around the number of projects. As I could, if you would like me to, I could share with you the map of projects where people have benefited. 300,000 of them have benefited from the increase in water supply. What's that, sorry? You would know. The ultimate completion of these investments will move Jamaica to its Vision 2030 goal of potable water and sanitation for all. The people have a right to know how their money is being spent, and it is why we're not shy about updating the nation on our infrastructure projects. And there are many persons right across the length and breadth of the country who are already benefiting from increased water access and water resilience. So the final point wasn't quite a question. My criticism was not of the people of Redberry, it was of you. Because as former chairman of the Water Commission, there is no project in South Manchester that you would have approved to give the people of South Manchester water when you had the chance so to do. and my criticism of you is as a former Minister of National Security, not discouraging the breaking of the law in blocking the road, Mr. President. So ultimately, it is, I want to be very clear. Very clear, Mr. President. People of Red Bear deserve water, and it is this administration that is going to give it to them. Because when that administration had the chance, they did no such thing.
Minister.
Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business today. I want to take the opportunity to thank Minister Samuda for his detailed presentation and complete with visual graphics to help in our understanding of the significant work at play to ensure that the water woes of the people of Jamaica are dealt with efficiently and effectively. I want to thank him for his work in this regard. On that note, Mr. President, I ask that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed.
Thank you very much. Just before we go, I had the privilege of sitting in the chamber during the transition from Mrs. Cook to Mrs. Curtis, and now from Ms. Curtis to Ms. Lowe. And I just want to thank the team that Ms. Lowe has selected to sit with her today. I think that we were all impressed by their quiet capacity. Ms. Brandon, who is sitting as the Assistant Deputy Clerk, and Ms. Newman, who is sitting as the Assistant Clerk. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I know that, and the reason why I mention it, because I know that sometimes the change is a bit awe-inspiring in the right use of that word. So thank you very much, Ms. Lowe, and thank you very much. The question is that the Senate be adjourned for a date to be fixed. Those in favor? Against? This honorable chamber now stands adjourned for a date to be fixed.